there is a real obsession with Israel in the Muslim world. And no, it didn't start with the war in Gaza. And no, it has very little to do with the Palestinians. Think about it. Iran is 2,000 kilometers away from Israel. There are two countries in between itself and Israel. The Iranians are not even Arabs, and their leaders have been publicly calling for the destruction of Israel for decades. And if you think that they care about the Palestinians, you couldn't be more wrong. The Iranians have killed about 1 million Arabs over the last 40 years in conflicts with Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And speaking of Yemen, a country that is more than 1,000 kilometers away from Israel, what do the Houthis have on their flag? Death to Israel and death to the Jews. The biggest conflict in the Middle East today is the war in Yemen. About 500,000 people have died there. But you don't see any demonstrations in Muslim countries or Muslim communities. Look at Al Jazeera's headline today, and this one from yesterday, and the day before, and the day before, and so on. According to Al Jazeera, the only thing that is happening in the world is Israel killing civilians. Sometimes I wonder how many Yemenites need to die for the pro-Arab students in the US to start protesting. 500,000 deaths, not enough? Would 1 million, 2 million get them onto the streets? How many Muslims need to be killed by other Muslims for Muslims to start talk about it half as much as they talk about Israel? You don't need to go too far to check if I'm right or not. Take a look at the YouTube channels of Muslim commentators, such as Muhammad Hijab, Mahdi Hassan, Bassem Youssef, The Muslim Skeptic, Smile Tujana. They are all obsessed with Israel and the Jews. 0% of them are talking about the biggest conflicts in the Middle East today, Yemen and Syria. If you follow the Arab and Muslim media, you'll be forgiven for thinking that Israel is the size of Asia. Now, this is not the first political video I've made, so I already know what some of the comments will be. Two wrongs don't make a right. Israel must stop the genocide. First of all, there is no genocide, and I invite you to check the numbers. The number of Arabs in Gaza and the West Bank and from the river to the sea has risen. If you want to talk about genocide, look at the numbers of Jews, Christians, Hindus, and all other minorities in all Muslim countries. That's where you will find the genocidal numbers. But don't just take me at my word. After all, I'm just a hardcore Zionist with a thick Hebrew accent. Check the number of Christians and Jews living in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, or Iran today compared to 50 years ago. Check the number of Hindus living in Pakistan. Tens of thousands of black Christians have been murdered in Nigeria by Muslims in recent years. And all is dead quiet on the Western Front. Professors in universities don't teach it. Students don't protest about it. And the media doesn't report on it. If there is an accident and one person dies and people are outraged and take part in demonstrations or even riots, and there is another accident on the other side of the road and 100 people die and no one ever talks about it, then it raises an interesting question. Why? Why do Palestinians get 100 times or 1,000 times more attention than anyone else? Allow me to solve this mystery. The answer is that it has nothing to do with the Palestinians and everything to do with Israel and the Jews. In this video, I will be explaining what is lurking behind this obsession. I will start off with religion and history. Muslim society is highly religious. In the West, religion plays no role in politics. But just because you live in a secular state, it doesn't mean that everyone else does. Here is a quick example. Hamas is the leading political movement in Palestinian society. The Hamas constitution states that Israel will exist until Islam wipes it out. Islam, by the way, is mentioned 136 times in their document. And the words Palestinian state are mentioned a total of 0 times. And to those who say that every religion has its extremists, I invite you to take a part in a challenge. I will go to the most extreme Jewish settlements and ultra-Orthodox communities, stand in the main square and shout that there is no God and the Bible is nonsense and that King David is a joke. And you will do the same but in Muslim communities and shout about Islam, the Quran, and Muhammad. I proposed the same challenge to Hassan Abi, a prominent streamer who made a video attempt to debunk one of mine, but he didn't reply. I wonder why. I don't wonder why. I know, as you too know, that Muslim society is way more religious and way more violent. So, in the Muslim worldview, Islam came along to replace Judaism and Christianity. And you can see this in every aspect of their religion. Where the Jews had a temple in Jerusalem, the Muslim came along and say, no, this is actually where Muhammad ascended to heaven, even though Jerusalem is not even mentioned in the Quran. This is not my Jewish point of view. The Waqf, the Muslim authorities, have confirmed this themselves. A lot of stories in the Quran were taken from the Jewish Bible. Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses. The Muslims did the same with Jesus, and a lot of churches were turned into mosques. This was a way to demonstrate the superiority of Islam. In the Muslim worldview, all of the world should be Muslim. And for now, it is divided into two: Dar el-Islam, the House of Islam, and Darb el-Harb, the House of War. Darb el-Islam is all the countries that are Muslim. Jews and Christians may be allowed to remain alive, but they are treated as dhimmis, or second-class citizens, and they have to pay an extra tax called jizya. In general, those who aren't Muslims are called kafir, which can be translated as infidels. Those who don't believe must convert or face execution. And if you zoom out and look at all of the Muslim countries as a whole, you will see that there isn't a single minority, religious or ethnic, that is not suffering under Muslim rule. Show me one Muslim country where the Christian population is growing, or the Jewish or Hindu population. Darb el-Harb, the land of war, is all the parts of the world that are not yet Muslim. If what I'm saying is new to you, if you've never heard the terms Dar el-Islam, Dar el-Harb, Dhimmi, Kafir, Jizya, then you know very little. But that is not your fault. You might watch thousands of reports on CNN and BBC and not hear these basic Islamic terms. Let's take a look at the history. From the 7th century on, Islam spread very rapidly, colonizing vast parts of Asia and Africa, and was close to doing the same in Europe. Jews and Christians lived as dhimmis and paid the jizya for more than 1,000 years. In different places, Jews were subjected to different humiliating rules. In Morocco, Jews had to live in ghettos called malach, and in some towns, they weren't allowed to enter the main square or ride horses. Jews suffered pogroms in Morocco, Yemen, and Iran. Often, they were forced to convert to Islam or leave. Muslims saw this as a sign of superiority. It was a sign that Islam has defeated the miserable Jews. But then, after 1,200 years, the Jews, the inferior people, claimed sovereignty. And not only did they claim it, but they did it in their ancestral land, a place that was under Muslim rule. According to Islam, any land they conquer belongs to them forever. By the way, they see Spain as an Islamic land because they colonized it in the 8th century. To all my Spanish friends, the West is next, and you will be the first in line. So the Jews didn't claim just any old land, but they came back to their ancestral land, where the Muslims have imposed their own new tradition. So as they see it, those they have defeated are coming back, which drives this obsession. The biggest symbol of this obsession is the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa compound. If the Jews had their temple there, and then the Muslims said, no, this is actually where Muhammad ascended to heaven, and now the Jews are back, what happens to their holy place? Now, the Jews didn't damage the Temple Mount, and as a gesture of goodwill, the Israelis allowed the Waqf, the Muslim authorities, to stay there. But many Muslims feared that the Jews would do to them what they had done and are doing to others, conquering and destroying them. In the 19 years that the Jordanians ruled the old city of Jerusalem, they didn't allow the Jews to visit the Western Wall or the Temple Mount. So many Muslims are afraid that the Jews will behave the same way they would behave. And this is the heart of their obsession. And to that, you need to add that the Jews, the dhimmis, the second-class citizens, are successful, whereas the Muslim world is, well, not in a great place, shall we say. There is no democracy, many internal conflicts, poverty, a lack of innovation. Even Qatar and Dubai, they are rich because they are sitting on huge reserves of oil. So they build the tallest building, the biggest shopping mall, and an 8-star hotel. Wow, but they are all extreme Muslim dictatorships. What I find astonishing is not only the obsession they have with Israel, but also the way they blame the West for all their problems. All the Muslim YouTubers I mentioned are living in the West, of course, and are accusing Israel of genocide, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing, all the things that they are doing to Jews and Christians, and they are accusing the West of Islamophobia, right-wing extremists, and colonialism, of course. Yet they don't take a moment to have a good look at their own sick societies. They hate the West and its values, but they all want to live in the West. If you want Sharia law, go to where it is implemented and have fun. Afghanistan is calling. But that's a topic for another video.